And with that being said, we're going to move on and talk about this week's episode of the Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon. Episode 6 just premiered this past Sunday on HBO, entitled Smallfolk. And so we're very, very fastly approaching the season finale for season 2. So we only have 2 episodes left after this. Smallfolk, of course, is continuing to move the story along in really, really interesting ways. But we're going to dive in and talk about details and all the nitty-gritty from this week. But before we do that, we start off with our general impressions and feedback for the show. So, let's just get into your big picture thoughts. What did you think about this new episode of House of the Dragon?
Yeah, decent episode. I don't think I like it as much as the last 2, but it's not really anything about the actual, I think, quality of the show. It just happens to be the moments, I think, of the story and that we're telling. But this is actually a very fast-paced episode, which I think is interesting. There's so much happening. We're cutting back and forth so much. There was a couple times I was like, dang, did we switch again? Like, we're really trying to get the pieces of the puzzle of everything going down between Team Green and Team Black. And I'm okay with it, man. I think there's one of the things that still frustrates me about this season is there's only 8 episodes, so there's so much to do, and there's so much we have to do in order to, I think, kind of wrap this season up, which I think is part of why we're moving so fast. But I think for this episode, it works. We're hitting all the beats that we need to hit to move the story forward. Some stuff is getting really scary out here. I love to see the political powers at play that's going down in this episode in particular, but there's so much to talk about. The episode is called Smallfolk, which I think I love. I've been talking about that concept, I think, for the past couple of weeks in general. Like, I love that they're going with this theme, I think, for the season. I think it makes sense, again, politically, for the show and what they're trying to do here, man. So yeah, I still had a good time with it. Still a really, really, really solid episode. Just not as solid as probably the last 2, but man, I really don't have any complaints still. I think the show is still doing what it needs to do.
So I actually think, in terms of having one of the more talkier episodes, I think that this is probably the best that they've had this season, just because of the fact that we are giving really, really good time and attention to all of the supporting characters in the show. And this episode in particular, it's pretty long. It's 67 minutes. And they do, I think, a really, really terrific job at making sure that each specific scene where we're going back and forth, we're examining different characters, we make sure to check in with pretty much everybody. And there's some pretty significant movements across the board in terms of all of the characters that happen. Now, of course, it's not going to be as flashy or showy as a big battle sequence that we would have a couple of weeks ago. But I actually think that this was better than last week's episode, just because of the fact that things continue to still move, of course, and definitely provide that forward momentum to get us to where we need to be. But I think ultimately we are seeing kind of, I think we're at the point of the show where there's only but so much source material for this particular story. Like, it's not like Game of Thrones. It's not like what that original sort of series was. Like, there's not as much here. So they are kind of filling in the blanks for a lot of stuff, which I think is the reason that we do have less episodes. But even having less episodes, they still have to stretch stuff out. Like, theoretically, this probably could just be a 6-episode season to just get the actual source material into the show. But they are adding in a lot of context, a lot of those backroom meetings or things that happen in bedrooms or on bedsides, like those conversations that they don't explore in the books. They're actually opening that up and providing possibilities and context to those conversations that may have happened, because George R.R. Martin has only just alluded, like, yeah, these things are happening, these conversations and things are moving, but we'll probably never know the context of what actually occurred. And I think that this show is trying to fill in some of those blanks, which I really, really do appreciate, just because it does give you just so much more to do with all of the respective characters, and you're adding new dimensions. And obviously you are veering in some respects away from the source material and doing some things that weren't necessarily in the books. But I find them to be really, really intriguing concepts and ideas. And so I thought that this was a thoroughly entertaining show across the board. Definitely some shocker moments, of course, that happened, but all the things that I think needed to occur, again, to just continue to propel this forward. They're doing a pretty solid job at it. But with all of that being said, let's dive in and talk about that episode in detail. So if you've not seen the latest episode of House of the Dragon, this is your official spoiler warning. Go watch it and come back and finish out the rest of our conversation. Let's start things off in King's Landing. So Aemond is now in charge. He's the Prince Regent, but he's pretty pissed. You know, he's he's not having things go quite his way already. I think he's starting to realize, yeah, being king is not so easy, my guy. To rule over King's Landing and over Westeros, not the easiest thing, especially when people don't listen to you in the way that you want him to. And so he's having this whole plan with the Lannisters and the Triarchy and these blockades. He's really tight about all of that. But the real big occurrence that happens in some of the opening moments of this episode is an interaction between him and Allison. You know, after he dismisses the small council, she sticks around. He has a conversation with her, and they have a bit of an intimate moment. She pretty much kind of admits, yeah, maybe I haven't been the best mother. You know, maybe I haven't done the greatest job with you or the rest of my children, but that doesn't speak to him at all. That does not appeal to his heart. The guy is a very cold, calculated leader, and he dismisses her essentially from the small council. He looks at her like, yeah, what is it that you do? Like, what purpose do you actually serve? Oh, you know what? We don't need you anymore. And so he essentially banishes her. And so this is kind of like, I don't know, maybe the nail in the coffin for just everything Allison has dealt with this entire season. It's been blow after blow after blow. Her other son is fucking bedridden and half charred up. Her crazy psychotic son is in charge. Her father has left after he got dismissed as hand of the king. It's just all sorts of stuff that's going on with Allison. But a lot of the things that she was wrapped up in and that she was involved in have kind of reared their ugly head at this point. So, what did you make of just this interaction and the fact that Aemon made this pretty shocking betrayal of his mother and just said, you know, go away. I don't need you. You can do something else entirely.
Allison. She has been going through it, man. And part of it is because of mistake, but she has dropped the ball tremendously. And it's hard, I think, when you operate, you still operate in everything you do within this realm of just what patriarchy looks like in the world of House of the Dragon, because she has literally no hold on any of the men in her life. And I don't mean like, of course, how Aemon is like, I'm not a dog to be healed, not in that way, but like, I'm your mother. You gonna listen to me at all? Like, are you gonna do it? She keeps losing, I think, the men in her life in such interesting ways. She lost her son to Aemon, who just charred him, who's now bedridden. Aemon, she's lost to whatever created the monster. Like you said, she does kind of admit, like, I haven't been the best mother, but also she also like, Aemon, I know you've been bullied when you were little too. Like, we all know what you went through. Is there nothing left in there? Do you have no heart left at all? And like you said, he just kind of dismisses her. And of course it sucks for Allison, because again, she has been slowly losing everything week to week. She lost her grandson, her husband. There's nothing, like you said, this is the nail in the coffin. This is the last person, low key, that she has left. Of course, she still has her a couple other family members, right? Granddaughter and daughter and such. But this is very devastating for her, because even her, I think when she was talking to Rhaenyra, she was like, you know what he is, or you like, there's no stopping this. And I think it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to like try to do something to no avail. And so it's been very hard for her. Aemon he's cold now. He's reached the plateau I think he's want to reach to a degree, right? He's still trying to gain the respect, I think, of the council. And I think he also recognizes that without her, it's a little bit easier, because Allison is always like, is that a good idea? Should we be doing that? What is this? What is that? And I think he's like, why are you here? Go away. You're a bird chirping in my ear. Yeah, you're my mom, but that's all you are to me now, kind of, to the most part. You have no influence on me. So yeah, man, Aemon is officially off the hinges. Like, we always knew he was off the hinges, but it was still like a little bit like, okay, he's a little contained. This is like, he's King Regent now, whatever you call it. He's out of here, man. So yeah, it's crazy thing to see.
Firstly, I don't think Aemon respects the council whatsoever. I don't think he respects him at all. He called Larys a toad. He pretty much rejected him outright. Larys is definitely, I think, hurt by that, because he thought it was good. Like, after I voted for you, like I supported you being in this position. Nah, bro. Like, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. But Allison, on the other hand, she's the biggest loser of the season by far. She's just faced with L after L each and every week. Pretty much all the people that she thought she could trust and have by her side, they've all switched their allegiance and have gone to other places. I mean, if you just only imagine what could have happened if a few weeks ago her and Rhaenyra, when they were in the Sept, if they could have just figured something out and had a bit of a longer talk and really tried to figure out like, hey, there might be a way to stop all of this. Like we can probably put an end to this because of the prophecy. Like if she just took a little bit more of a moment, but I think her bullishness to just proceed forward and to just not consider where things are and to also just not really remember and take into account the fact that like you are still a woman at the end of the day in this patriarchy in this male dominated world. You're only going to get so far. That just it's come back to really bite her in the ass, and so she's seeing that come out tenfold really at this point across the spectrum. Aemond also makes a visit to his brother Aegon, who again is just out of commission entirely and doesn't appear to be doing all the more better. We also find out from the Grand Maester, or it might have been Larys actually, that Aegon's never going to be the same again. He tells him like you're not going to be able to run. Like you'll just have the bare minimum functionality. You can talk and you can think, but you're not going to be the same man you used to be. But we do see Aemond visit him and pretty much intimidatingly just make sure that his brother knows like yeah, nigga, I got your spot now. So don't try it. Do not try to come back. What happened that day? Oh, I don't remember anything. How did you read that scene? Does Aegon not really remember? Are the battle wounds so much they inflicted so much damage that he doesn't really recount and recall what happened, and maybe we'll have to go on a journey of him trying to remember? Or is he just doing that out of fear, just knowing that his brother is completely psychotic at this point and he doesn't want to push him any further?
Oh, he absolutely remembers, bro. He not fucking with that nigga no more. He understood, I think, completely what was happening there and was like, nah, I don't remember anything. Cause Aemon is so or Aegon is so down and hurt right now, man. What's crazy is even in looking at him, I'm like, bro, they really kept you alive. Like part of me is like, just kill me at this point. Because I know he going through agony over there, bro. He's literally partially charred. It's like he's like the Two-Face right now of like, you know what I'm saying, he's going through the same thing that Two-Face went through, like bedridden. Half his your body is done. You're not going to be able to do any of the things that you were able to do before. And so I think this is him like, bro, one, he's pushing the ball into my chest. That shit hurts. Of course I don't remember anything, bro. Like, go away. I'm just trying to heal. Like, you over here trying to do this power play and I'm trying to survive. So no, I'm not trying to come back. So yeah, I think he's super afraid. Even the fact that Aemon's in the room, I think had him afraid, that he recognized him being there. He's afraid of him. Because I think there's a very, very visceral image in his head of his brother looking him in his eyes and saying Drakars. I really do. And so I think he remembers that, and I think everything in that scene is him remembering that, man. It's some dark stuff going on with Aemon.
Yeah, it's definitely self-preservation out of fear. He's only saying that just to not succumb to any worse injuries. Because if he were to just outright say like, "Oh yeah, you definitely fucking called for my murder out there," Aemon's the type to just end all of that shit immediately. Even though that would put him in a very precarious position. But yeah, I think he's so fearful, he's so hurt. He's just in such a state of vulnerability that he's not trying to stir up any sort of confrontation, especially with Aemon at this point. Larys, I'm interested. Like, what do we think Larys even wants at this point? Like, I think obviously there's a proximity to power, just like being close to it, and obviously he's changing his allegiances as he sees fit. But he is sort of stung by that rejection that he gets from Aemon, and he sits by Aegon's bedside and shares, sort of a story about the whole Clubfoot origin, about how he came to be, and so they had a bit of a tender moment there. But I don't know, like what do we think he wants? Because he's definitely a little weird. Definitely has his own sort of fetishes, but he's moved around a lot. First he attached himself to Alicent, and then Aegon, and then Aemon, back and forth all the time. Where do we see? I guess ultimately like where his allegiances are, or at least where his motivations might be.
It's kind of hard to tell. I think he is. I think after seeing that Aemond in his, I think relationship is kind of not going to be a thing. I think he does make a play for Aegon in order to be like, okay, in the event that Aegon is able to come back and do something and be the rightful king, I need to be in his good graces, because I don't want Otto Hightower to be the hand. I want to be the hand. You know what I mean? Like he very clearly wants to be the hand. And so I still think that's the play. I think he's still trying to find ways to become the hand, or at least to reach the highest point possible, right? Like this is still a play at, I guess, his version of the throne. I think as to some point, like, oh, I maybe not be able to get the crown, but I can sure damn near get close. So I think he's definitely reaching for that. But right now, just through Aegon, who is vulnerable right now, who is trying to get him to relate to him right now. He's like, look, my foot is toe up. And you are going to be toe up like this for even worse than I am for a very long time. This is how you operate through that. This is how you're going to feel. And so, yeah, man, I think he's just trying to he's trying to play all the sides he can, I think, to get to that next step. And I think right now what that means for him is kind of using the emotions of Aegon. I think he's going to continue to do that until we figure out what happens next, because he's not really trying to go get Otto Hightower. Is he going to do it? I mean, he probably has to, but he's going to try to make some other plays in order for that not to happen.
Yeah, can't wait for the return of Otto. But I think Laris is essentially, I mean, he's kind of the opposite on the King's Landing side of what Mysaria is to Rhaenyra. And I think that he recognizes, he understands where the real power lies in this whole dynamic, like where the real power orchestrates. And in this show, they have consistently, I think, sort of taught us, like, the hands of the king, they're the ones that are really making all the moves. They're making all the decisions. Mm-hmm. Like, of course, the final say has to come down from the king or whoever's the regent, but the hands are really dictating all the motions and the movements. And I think that this is really what motivates him to figure out where it makes the most sense to make sure that that continues to happen for himself. And so I think that's going to be obviously a big continuing motivation for him. But also in King's Landing, a big thing that happened in this episode, which is really the namesake of the episode, is Smallfolk. Basically, Mysaria had a plan to sort of manipulate the way that the people in King's Landing are feeling. They send a bunch of small rowboats loaded with food, flying the Targaryen banner to King's Landing. And basically that arrival of food, once the people of King's Landing see that, knowing that they are pretty much blocked in, they can't go seek out their own food, their own resources, that just pisses everybody off. And we see that Alicent tries to go find safe harbor in the Sept, and she tries to just get away from everything. But essentially a riot breaks out. The entire city is essentially revolting now because they're starving. They don't have food to feed themselves or their families, and they've just had enough. And we're seeing basically the power of the people really rise in this episode, and seeing how they can truly dictate the perception. And this has been something that's been played with in all of these episodes this season, just the perception of what the people think of these people in power, the leaders of these different factions of these different houses. What do people think of Rhaenyra at any given point in time? How are we gonna change the perception and have it play in our favor based on an event that just happened? But now we're definitely seeing everybody in King's Landing essentially turn against their own crown. What did you make of just seeing the scene unfold? Just how chaotic it was, how consequential it also might be, and ultimately how it reflects, I think, the intelligence and really kind of the forethought of Mysaria to have this plan and ultimately for it to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, Mysaria's moving like Otto Hightower right there. Like when it happened, I was like, whoa, this is smart. This is so smart the way this was played. I mean, again, your people are hungry. When them boats show up with a Targaryen banner, specifically the black Targaryen banner, it's like, oh, not only is she, of course, claiming, I think, to be, she's supposed to have her seat on the throne, but also this is something that her father did. They were talking about that in the episode. They were like, yo, Viserys, he used to care for the small folk. You know what I'm saying? It was like, no matter what, he loved his wine. He loved everything that he had going on, but he always made sure the small folk were okay. And they have not been feeling that ever since Viserys has been gone. And Rhaenyra gives them a piece of that with Mysaria's help, of course. And so I think it was such a good play, especially after they're making so many bad plays over there in King's Landing. I mean, everything they do is like, the people hate. Like, why did you do that? Y'all locking us in. Y'all hanging people. Y'all parading dragon heads. Like, y'all are really wilding right now. And instead, the queen that is claiming to be on the throne, who should be on the throne, is giving us food. Oh yeah, it's time to riot. It's time to revolution. This is ridiculous. She's the person who needs to be on the throne. So again, I really like that play. I think it made a ton of sense. I don't think they knew the people would riot in that way, but I think it all worked out in their favor. So man, yeah, just a good play overall. I can't wait to see what the people continue to do in King's Landing. But man, so smart to get Team Green so distracted in their own confines of their own wall that it's going to be hard for them to fight a war at 100%.
I mean, wars often are fought on all fronts and on many different ends. It's not just on the battlefield. It's the political nature. It's how society perceives things. I mean, there's often been public outcry against conflicts and battles and war throughout history where certain factions or certain countries, they're like, why are we fighting this war again? Why are we wrapped up in this conflict with so and so? Because oftentimes the people in charge and in the leadership positions, they're not transparent. They're not being totally honest, and they're manipulating what people ultimately perceive and think that the war is about, by doing these grand acts of parading around all of these different things and trying to stoke fear in certain communities, whatever the case might be. But that's all just, it's coming back to really, really bite them in the ass, because it's a lot of short-sighted thinking. Ultimately, I think a lot of decisions that have been made on the part of Damon, or not Damon, but Aemon and Aegon exclusively, like those two have made some really short-sighted decisions in a very short amount of time. What Aemon did to just block in everybody, what Aegon did with the rat catchers, like that stuff that it just can't be unchecked. These are not small decisions to be made. These have long lasting repercussions and effects, especially in terms of how the people perceive you. And right now, Team Black over at Dragonstone, they don't have the forces to match up against King's Landing on the battlefield. And so they have to win it and change the perception in other ways. And this was a really smart way to do so on the part of Mysaria, to really just dictate how people are perceiving everything that's happening within King's Landing. Let's move over to Damon and I guess talk about this haunted house at Harrenhal, which continues to just go crazy on his mind and on his psyche. Another familiar face pops up. We get the return of Viserys, played by Patty Considine, who comes back, and they have a really interesting interaction, which is pretty much similar to what happened in the first season, where Viserys essentially tells him, like, you're not going to be heir. Like, this is not fit and cut out for you. And I think it really just speaks to the psyche of Damon and how much that moment hurt him. The fact that he's sort of reliving it here once again in Harrenhal. And he has another, sort of interaction with Alice in a second that we can touch on that's going to be really, really important. But how did you feel about seeing Patty Considine back here as Viserys, and just, sort of the moment and how it sort of, again, I think just once again sort of spoke to what Damon is going through at this particular time, sort of revisiting a lot of these closeted emotions, but also some of these demons that have existed through his past and now in his present.
Man, Patty Considine, so good to see him back. I mean, I think is renowned. I think George R. R. Martin even said this. Like, the dude killed even what Viserys is supposed to look like in the pages of Game of Thrones, or in the pages of Fire and Blood. Man, like he has kind of superseded what I even imagined this character could be, and so it's really cool to see him back here, because he played the role so well as Viserys, man, that like you can continue not only to see, I think, his presence be missed, of course, throughout the game, or the House of the Dragon we've watched thus far without him. But in seeing him, it makes you go, damn, that was a good dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, in his absence, you're like, man, all these people suck. And then as soon as I see him, I'm like, man, that was a good king. I said that even when I see it. I was like, dang, that was a good dude. He was really trying to do his best, man. And I think that really speaks to how good he is at the role. This dude Damon's going through it. He's going through it. I think this is like one of the last people who was going to haunt him, I think, for sure. But this is one of the biggest ones, right? Because this is a moment where, one, like you said, Viserys ends up telling Daemon, like, you are never going to be king. Not only that, but there's another moment where Viserys is like, I think, over like Emma's body, and Daemon's like trying to pull him closer, and he's like, I'm sorry, you needed me, I'm here now. And that's so much guilt wrapped up within Daemon, man. So much guilt that he's never truly worked through. And I think that, again, that's what this castle is all about. All of these things have happened to Daemon, and we see him as such this like crazy, scary, kind of brooding dude, but also like you've also been through a lot and you've never talked about it. You've never sat down and reckoned with it. Because that's how he operates. Even your wife upstairs having a baby, you at the table trying to play and stuff. You know what I'm saying? He's never working through any of these emotions. And so it makes sense that Viserys would be, I think, one of the last people, I think, to show up in Harrenhal and haunt him in this way, because I'm sure there's so much about his brother's death that he regrets. Him not being there in certain ways, him again just not being able, I think, to support him in the ways that he should have. So man, Damon, whew, like he needs to get out of there. This is like, this has to be close to the last straw for him. It did seem like the last straw. He was like, all right, I'm done with this shit. What's going on? Are you putting some shit in my drink? Are you putting some shit in my drink? Are you trying to kill me? You don't want me to be here? What is happening? Like, he's really sick of it. And I understand, man, because that has to be the last straw. Of people keep popping up in this castle that I used to care about that are no longer here. Like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I think this just reaffirms the fact that Damon, and he kind of says it here really in so many words, like he didn't just want the crown for power, but I think that there was a real sort of sense of affirmation that he wanted from his brother, from Viserys. He wanted some sort of love and affection, some approval from him, that
Mm-hmm.
he could be fit to be king, and that he can ultimately, be fit to rule at the end of the day. I think it's less about that power play, because he has elements of power, of course. It's not really about that, but ultimately the perception of what he wants, and also his brother's perception of him up until this point, has not been the most positive. And Viserys has said some harsh things to Daemon that I think have just
Mm-hmm.
haunted him this entire time for years and years and years. And he's never gotten over it. And the fact that he has this relationship with Rhaenyra, just a consistent reminder across the board, like, oh my God, he chose her. That's just always gonna really create those feelings of resentment that I think he's felt up until this point. But he goes out and he sees Alice, shortly after he runs into Simon Strong, and Simon's like, "Yeah, I really fear you're not getting enough sleep," which I thought was a hilarious line, because it's like, no shit, my guy, he's not sleeping at all. But he runs into Alice, and they have an important interaction too, because she basically tells him, I think, what he kind of needed to hear. Like, did you ever consider that the reason that Rhaenyra was chosen for that position was because she didn't even want it? And sometimes the person who wants it the most is kind of the
Mm-hmm.
least suited to have it at the end of the day. And that's
Mm-hmm.
probably a motivating factor as to why you weren't named to be the ruler of the Iron Throne. And he essentially, I think, sort of concedes in their back and forth. And he eventually admits that he needs help from her, even though, he's like, oh, I need counsel, not help. But, ultimately he admits that he does need help from Alice, even though we know Alice is kind of the one who's committing a lot of this witchcraft. She's responsible for, I think, a lot of these visions and these ghosts and all of this crazy shit that's happening to him, but maybe for his own good at this point. And maybe we've reached a place to where he's having somewhat of a breakthrough. He's always going to be a little unhinged and a little crazy, but he's having somewhat of a breakthrough, and I guess a reconciliation with his past and his family and his history. What did you make of just their interaction, and ultimately the place that he reached by the end of the conversation?
I thought it was a really good conversation. And also Alice is she's doing such a good job of being able to make, I think, kind of break Damon down in a lot of different ways, which again, it still makes me think like part of these hallucinations is her. Because it's like, how are you doing this? How are you breaking this man down like this? It's almost like she's definitely in on the joke, kind of a little bit. But again, at the close to the beginning of that conversation, she is like, if you need help, just say that. He's like, no, counsel. And but then by the end of the conversation, he's like, I need your help. I was like, wait, you just said 2 minutes ago, counsel. Now it's help 2 minutes later. And to me, as fast as he got there, it was like, Alice is really breaking this dude down. So I thought it was a really cool conversation to see. Now, of course, not only Damon being able to be vulnerable in a moment and that Alice makes him vulnerable, but even to an extent, kind of what we've been talking about since he got to Harrenhal, somewhat of a reimagining for Damon, a reinvention arc of some sorts of him kind of becoming a different kind of leader. You know what I mean? He has wanted some of these things, but I think he's starting to recontextualize why he wants some of these things, in terms of wanting to have the throne for himself, and how the ways in which he operates, within darkness and within light. Like, that's who Damon is. And so it's been cool to see. But I think I love how Alice is like, now just don't do anything. We need you to do nothing for a couple days. And it's funny because I feel like Damon is the opposite of that. Damon is like, he's a go-getter. He gonna do what he needs to do when the time, like, he's always so forward, and I think it's crazy to even think that he might really just sit down for 3 days, like you said. So we'll see, man. But I think overall it was a really insightful conversation about how Damon is going to end up here.
For sure. Let's move over to Dragonstone with Team Black, and off of the events of last week, we had Rhaenyra and Jace sort of reach an understanding that there might be other people with Targaryen blood out here, people that can potentially be dragon riders, and so we see that plan come into action. She has a conversation with Sir Steffan Darkland and tells him, "Hey, you have some Targaryen ancestry, and we want you to try to ride a dragon. We want you to claim Sea Smoke." And I think immediately he knows, like, oh, this is not a great proposition, because my life is going to be on the line. And if he didn't know that then, he knows it now, because she reaffirms him, like, this is a life or death situation. If you cannot claim this dragon, you will be no more. And we get an entire sequence of Sir Steffan Darkland approaching Sea Smoke, and for just a split second, it appears maybe he will be able to ride Sea Smoke. Maybe that very, very thin Targaryen blood he has in his body will help him overcome this very, very daunting proposition. But Sea Smoke wasn't having that shit at all. Immediately, Sea Smoke chars and burns him alive. It is a really visceral, really violent death for Sir Steffan Darkland, but probably not the most surprising outcome of that entire situation, just because we know in this world, dragons are not horses. You can't just get on the backs of these motherfuckers. They don't work like that, bro. They have connections with their riders, and if you do not have a certain bloodline, if you don't have a certain connection, it's not going down. And so we see how horrific it got, and we also see how I think Rhaenyra dealt with the situation. She clearly was shaken up by it, and I'm sure feels responsible for the death of Sir Steffan Darkland. So what did you think about just this whole sequence and seeing everything he went through ultimately to kind of failing at being able to ride Sea Smoke?
I knew this dude was doomed from the minute she asked, man. I see him walk in. I was like, this dude, we about to watch him die for 20 minutes. Like, just getting there, getting to the moment of him even seeing Sea Smoke arriving. I'm like, this dude is really about to die. I can't believe we're putting him through this. And it's so interesting because it is technically a decent idea to a degree, right? This is like it is off the hinges. It is crazy. It is very risky, but it's like, if this works, we up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we celebrate. And so I understand why they're going through it, but to have to, I think, put a life on the line in this way is so scary. And I think it was just crazy to see Sir Steffan, like you said. Sea Smoke got him for a second. Sea Smoke was like, hey, you want to come over here and say what's up to me? And I think what's so interesting about that scene too is, like, I think a lot of us assume, like, maybe it's because maybe he didn't have enough Targaryen blood in him or anything. Like, maybe he was just so damn afraid it didn't work out. You know what I'm saying? I think there's like a couple more factors that could have been the reason why it didn't work. Sea Smoke could have just not liked him. Like, I don't know. There's a couple things, but I think it's funny because we'll never exactly know what happened. It just didn't happen. It could have been because of the fear. They said, don't fear him. How could you probably see a dragon up that close for the first time, like, in your life, and not be afraid? You know what I'm saying? They were like, have no fear. I'm sure he was afraid. But yeah, maybe it was the 0.0001% of Targaryen blood, and the reason Sea Smoke wasn't having it either. So it's unfortunate the way it went down, man. But yeah, I seen it coming as soon as old boy walked in. I was like, he's gonna die.
He got too cocky at that moment. He was like, I've done it. He, like, before he even got on Sea Smoke's back, he was like, I've done it. And I think that was what did it. Sea Smoke was like, really? You got what? Oh, no, hell no, you don't. No, the fuck you do not. She heard that and was like, you don't got shit, motherfucker. You're about to die. I think that's exactly what happened, because she was definitely sort of conceding, allowing it to happen. He said those words, and it's like, my guy, they can probably feel and understand your tone and tenor right now. They probably don't understand the language you're speaking, but she knows you're being a little too cocky right now. But I love that by the end of this, Sea Smoke is like, you know what? F this. I'm going to determine my own destiny and my own rider. And we see Sea Smoke leave Dragonstone and basically go to the Greens. And by all accounts, we don't see it exactly happen, but by all accounts, by the end of this episode, we see that Sea Smoke essentially claims her new rider. She goes to seek out one of the bastard sons of Corlys. I think it's Alan, the one that she's ultimately going to have him claim her. But what did you think
Mhm.
about that moment? Just like at the end of the episode, that it's not necessarily the Targaryen ancestry there, but we are getting and we are seeing that there are still like bastard children who might still be eligible and might still be capable to ride some of these dragons. And first and foremost, it looks like Alan's going to be one of those that'll be able to ride Sea Smoke in the near future.
Yeah. So I think the end of the episode, I think it might have been Adam at the end. I think Alan's the bald one. I think.
Whoever, I don't know. I'm confused by all
Whoever.
these names, but Adam, sure.
Yeah, there's so many names, bro. It's kind of ridiculous. I think it's Adam. I could be wrong too. Shoot, but yeah. Wow. What I it felt. It only felt weird to me because I didn't know that was a thing. Like I didn't know a dragon could just pull up on somebody and be like, "Bro, I was not fucking with this other nigga, dog." Like you, and I love the memes on the internet. Everybody was like, he just wanted a nigga on his back. He was like, "Hey, the last rider I had was black. I'm not messing with this white dude over here. I need some melanin." So I came to you, bro. I came to you. So yeah, it's very interesting how that works. Again, I don't think I've ever heard or seen that just in this world before. And again, I don't read the books or anything in depth, so I don't know if there's precedent for that. But to see the dragon, to see Sea Smoke pull up on him like that was very surprising for me. I was like, whoa, what is going on here? It's almost like an act of desperation a little bit for Sea Smoke. Like, no, I need a rider. I know where one at. Let me go pick him up real quick. I thought it was very interesting. But I love that that we're about to have another black man on a dragon. It's time. Corliss ain't gonna do it. If Laner ain't here, we need a black man on the dragon. So I'm all for Adam or Alan, whichever one it is, to be on this dragon. And I'm glad to see Smoke too, because Sea Smoke looks really cool. Like what a cool dragon. So yeah, I can't wait to see. I think that play out completely, because when you see Rhaenyra leave, everyone is like, who could this be? What's going on? What is the play here? And I think everyone is going to be surprised, which is funny because it's almost like Corliss has not told anybody about these bastard children that he has. And it's like you just made this dude your hand and you don't even know about his bastard children. It's like, oh man, you were lying to me, Corliss. I just made you my hand. I wonder if that's going to be a thing in the future, a conversation that's going to be had in the future. But very curious to see how that plays out.
She better deal with it. This was her idea. And so the fact that Adam can fucking ride this dragon now is only going to help her. So she better just be okay with it and
Right.
not try to check Corliss. It's like, you know what? All right, Corliss, it's fine. Like, you had these secret bastard children. But look, it's going to benefit us at the end of the day. They're going to be able to ride
Right.
dragons, which they couldn't do before. So get over it, Rhaenyra. It'll be okay. But speaking of her, back at Dragonstone, this episode ends with a shocking moment, I would say, because it's not in the books. But Rhaenyra and Mysaria are talking. They're having conversations, and Mysaria sort of opens up and tells Rhaenyra about a previous, sort of encounter of sexual abuse. And, they talk about their loyalty to each other, how they've developed this relationship and in a relatively short amount of time, because it has been a pretty quick occurrence, the fact that they've trusted each other so willingly. But we have seen Mysaria, as we noted earlier, be successful and be very, very trustworthy, and be worthy of the trust from Rhaenyra so far in this whole entire conflict. And we see that I think Rhaenyra is ultimately moved by this vulnerability and her actions up until this point. And they share a kiss, and they share a very romantic kiss with each other. Again, this is not something that's in the books. This is very much new, but it's certainly going to be interesting in terms of how this is going to just continue to, I guess, play into the different relationships that everybody has with each other, especially whenever we do see Daemon return, and what that might ultimately mean for their romantic relationship, and also the fact that Mysaria is, sort of operating in somewhat the shadows. I don't think a large amount of people really know about her except those in
Mm-hmm.
Dragonstone, but this is definitely sort of a secret potential love that's starting to really blossom here between these two, and I'm sure it's only going to become more passionate from here on out. So what did you make of just this moment between these two and the fact that they ultimately had that really romantic kiss between each other?
I mean, again, after the sad departure of Rhaenys, Mysaria right now was really the only woman that I think is helping her with this war, from a woman perspective, somebody she can relate to, that's not coming in thinking about the all the evil parts of war, the and just going to war. I think with ill intentions, man, Masaria really is working from a different kind of shadow. She is working, um I think, to actually kind of try to win the war. I think in the best ways, not just force and brutality. And I think that really touches Rhaenyra, that she's by her side so much, that she supports Rhaenyra in this way so much. And I felt this chemistry for a little bit. I didn't know they were going to go this direction completely until it actually happens. And I was like, y'all standing really close together. I was like, that was a pretty good conversation between those two. What's going on here? Yeah, and I just wasn't sure that they were going to go the direction again of them potentially having a little love fling, but they did. And I think it makes all the sense of the world. This Mysaria has been supporting her so much, and then Mysaria kind of gives her life story like, hey, I went through this trauma thing. It was ridiculous. I'm sure you've been through trauma too, but I've also been through some trauma. It was terrible. In that hug, man, that hug is Rhaenyra telling Mysaria that I see you, and I think they see each other in that way. And again, these are two women I think that are components of war now, and there's not a lot of women that are components of war. On the flip side, Alicent has no power right now, but Rhaenyra and Mysaria kind of do. They kind of are operating from the shadows and doing what they can do. And so I think that really brings them closer here into what, like you said, what could be a budding romance. I don't know how far they'll go because I don't know. I just up until this point, queer love in the We're the Game of Thrones just haven't done much with it. You know what I mean? And so I'm hoping they do more here, but we'll see what happens, man. But I love it. I think it makes sense. It's all working out. And yeah, that love behind the doors in this universe is just, it makes so much sense. Behind closed doors, it just makes so much sense in this universe. So yeah, I hope they continue to kind of explore that and what that looks like. Especially, let's say they keep going and then Daemon pulls up. I'm like, oh my god, what's about to happen? So I can't wait to kind of get into the mess of what that could potentially be either.
Well, it helps that she's pissed at Daemon. That's also playing into this whole thing. I mean, earlier in the episode, they kept saying his name, and she's like, Daemon, Daemon, Daemon. God damn it. Who else wants to say his name? Go ahead and get it out. And there was the other council member who was just yapping off at the mouth, and she turned around and smacked him in the face. She's like, you forget. You're supposed to fear me. Like, you can't just talk to me any type of way. And so she's sick of everybody except Mysaria. Mm-hmm. Mysaria is the only person who's not pissing her off, who's not telling her what you can't do and what you're supposed to be doing. She is the only person that sees her. And so the fact that we reached this place, they built it up well. I'm very, very curious to see how it all plays out. Any final things you want to mention about this episode before we move on?
The dragon problem is crazy. Like, we go to, what is it, Bela and the other son. I forgot the other son's name. He's like 3 years old, it looks like. I have no idea how old he is, but that dragon problem is crazy, bro. Just to pull up to a circle and there's nothing but dead bodies on the ground, charred, is like, we got to do something about this. Like, we have to. This is not okay. So I just think that's really interesting. I can't wait to see what happens there. But other than that, I don't have anything.
They better watch out for sure, because it's only going to get bigger. But we will certainly see in the penultimate episode next week. Folks, those are all of our thoughts on episode 6 of the Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon. If you've checked out this episode, hit us up and let us know what you think.